Okay.
This is Ryan.
And this is John. And this is our chapter of As the Story Grows with Nodes of Ranvier.
Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. This week, I'm joined by John Parker and Ryan Knutson, formerly of Nodes of Ranvier and currently of March in Arms. Nodes was a band I didn't get into until after the band broken up, so it was fun getting a brief overview of the band's career. Jon and Ryan share stories of the college where the band started, haunted houses in Arizona, the difference between their experience with Facedown and Victory Records, and their military-inspired power metal project, March in Arms. There's a second March in Arms record that the band is working on details for releasing. If you're a new listener to the podcast, welcome. Glad you're tuning in and checking out the show. If you like what you hear, subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share the podcast on your social media pages. Let people know you dig it. Enjoy this week's episode with Jon and Ryan from Nodes of Ranvier. You both originally from South Dakota?
Yes.
Yes.
What was growing up like for you guys?
You want to start?
Well, I am actually a farm kid, so
Okay.
I grew up on a farm. Had to do chores, all that stuff. But it was a real drag because when I was a teenager, all I wanted to be was a professional skateboarder. And so, like, I remember, like, getting angry and, like, yelling at my parents, like, why are there all these gravel roads around here? There's nowhere to skateboard. So.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, Ryan's not a city kid. What is Sioux Falls about? Is it just under 300,000 or 200,000 right now? Anyways,
It's under 2,000.
Yeah, just under 200,000. So I grew up in Sioux Falls. Ryan was just about an hour north of here. And so growing up in Sioux Falls, I mean, it didn't feel strange. We're 3 hours from Minneapolis and 3 hours from Omaha, Nebraska. And so you could get away for a weekend if you wanted to get to professional team sports or whatever. We had a venue here actually growing up called the Pomp Room, and I mean you could see anyone from Link 80 to the Suicide Machines came through. I remember seeing when the ska thing was going on, we had Less Than Jake and Real Big Fish come through, and they do a lot of like all ages shows. And there was a secret show one time. I think Aerosmith played. Yeah,
wow.
Like just off the cuff. And now it's a parking ramp, but in its heyday, that was my exposure because it was right across the street from the public library.
No.
So I could tell my parents that, yeah, I'm going down. I need to get a book. My teacher told me I need to get this book, and I would go and just grab a random book and run over to the Pomp Room and try to spend as much time as I could there. So, you know, we got live music any way that we could, and it was a pretty nice place to grow up. I'd say it was pretty. What's the word? You didn't really know what you were missing if you were missing anything, and then as you get older, you can branch out and. With the internet and the inception of, you know, everybody kind of coming closer together, it's hop in a van and you suddenly have friends all over the U.S. So
that's awesome. How'd you each get into music?
Older. I had a couple cousins that were into metal, and so, I mean, I think like the first. I was thinking about this a couple of years ago. I don't know why. Just like kind of the evolution. Maybe it was something someone said on Facebook, kind of like my introduction to heavy music. And I remember being in either first or second grade and having AC/DC's The Razor's Edge on cassette. And the only thing I could play it in was like this. It was like a Play School cassette player with a little attached microphone to it. and then from there it just evolved into, you know, all the old Metallica albums, and then you know, branching out into a lot of Victory Records stuff, like school and power metal.
Yeah, I remember, so Ryan and I actually met, I think I was 17 or 18. We met because he and a friend of mine who wanted to start a band, Thomas, the original vocalist from Nodes, Ryan and Thomas were going to the same college. I was still in high school. And we back in the day, this was when we were still burning CDs. And so I wanted, you know, when you join a band with new people, you want to see what's in their CD collection that you don't have. And I got my hands on Ryan's, and I remember, I think he pointed out this One King Down EP, and it's like to this day one of my favorite recordings ever. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, "Yep, this guy will work." So that's kind of how you test each other's moxie or whatever. But yeah, Ryan, and actually Ryan being into what's the band we went on tour with? 18 Wheels Are Rolling. Integrity, right?
Integrity.
So Ryan probably listened to Integrity earlier than most of us. I wasn't exposed to it until later on, but we actually did get to tour with Integrity. And one of my favorite stories is DeWitt. So we were in Hollywood playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, and DeWitt's up in the dressing rooms doing God knows what. So they're doing sound check, and they couldn't get DeWitt down to do the sound check. And so Ryan gets up and does, like, nobody really knew that Ryan had a good DeWitt impersonation. He just gets up there and starts going after it. I think Scott Staff was there too from Terror, wasn't he? He was like on stage or on the side of the stage, and everyone was like, what is this? Who is this guy? This is DeWitt. And DeWitt comes down while Ryan's doing sound check, and he's, you know, coming down the side of the stage or whatever. He just looks and he's like, well, this is taken care of. Nobody needs me here. So but yeah, the intro to music was you know, you'd have friends, you'd have, like I said, we did have a pretty darn burgeoning good burgeoning music scene in Sioux Falls. And I didn't have any siblings myself that exposed me to stuff, but I kind of got into that tooth and nail, you know, back catalog early on, stuff you'd find at used CD shops. And I mean, for me, it was kind of like MXPX and Operation Ivy, and then it just kind of bloomed from there. But yeah, it was fun because there was a really, once you kind of started buying your own music and not just listening to whatever your parents piped in or had in their house, you could do a lot worse than living around here, because there was so much DIY music going on, people making mixtapes and stuff. It was just a lot of energy around music and sharing it. So
that's cool. What was the evolution of bands like for you guys? Did you guys play in high school or?
Yeah, Ryan, what were you in? Were you in band at school?
Did you have a good band name?
Well, yeah, I school band. I had to play trombone because in order to play drums, you had to have piano lessons.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I was a boner. And then I was in a band called Red Moth, which was just like me, a bass player, and a guitar player / vocalist. And pretty much every gig we played, like, I shouldn't have been there because I'm like 13, 14 years old, and these are all like, you know, house parties with alcohol and playing bars and playing like outdoor music fests where you got to be 21 years old. And I think I must have been 16 probably when I don't think I really quit the band. I think my parents kind of talked to some of the members and told them like I couldn't be in the band anymore. Playing. Like we'd play like biker fests and stuff like that. So I was probably around stuff I shouldn't have been around. But Yeah, it was that, and then I wasn't in any bands until first year of college when Nodes started. So,
which is the best time for a band to start too, when you're, getting into lifelong debt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the intro to, let's see, I think Ryan had seen one of my. Ryan, did you ever see Edict of Milan, or were you going? I don't remember if we met.
No,
I don't think Ryan and I met before college.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had played, being in Sioux Falls, like I was in some, little punk rock bands, and then scant recordings here and there. Then I was in a band, kind of a screamo band called Edict of Milan, and we had a really cool, like I said, we had a cool scene in town. We had another band called Spirit of Versailles that was kind of the local favorite, screamo band, youth crew. We didn't really have a militant hardcore scene. We had more of that, kids were straight edge, but it really wasn't militant. It was more about having fun, and the straight edge kids got along with the vegan kids, got along with the, non-straight edge kids. There wasn't ever fights at shows. Shows weren't getting closed down, sort of thing. Unless there was a drunk or something that might get kicked out of a show, but there was never like crews going after each other. So, very constructive that way, and everybody felt welcome at shows. You'd have, we had Mastodon play before Remission came out. They just had this like 6-song EP on them, and they played in the basement for 16 to 20 kids. They had their own PA, and then we all waited 7-8 months for Remission to actually come out. But yeah, we got some of the local promoters just did a great job of bringing in a wide array of music, and then you'd have shows. I remember we saw Cool Hand Luke, so you'd have all kinds of band genres on one show, and you'd have Christian bands and secular, whatever, however you feel about that, but bands that were outspokenly Christian, bands that were outspokenly atheist or whatever, playing the same show, and kids would just support. It was like, it's a night of live music. My friends are going to be there. We're going to go have fun. And yeah, it was a really constructive scene. So it was fun to be, I think that was one of the creative driving factors, was being able to be in a band that would get to the point where promoters would take you seriously, and you'd be able to play shows with bands that you liked. I remember Nodes got on a show with Zayo when Dan wasn't in the band, and but it didn't matter. It was an opportunity to play with Zayo. That was one of the bands that transitioned for me from punk rock to metal and hardcore, and so to be able to play with them, and then later on meet Sean Jonas from Symphony in Peril and stuff like that. That was just, that was a dream come true. It was absolutely awesome. So yeah, it just kind of motivated you to keep growing musically and keep creating with your friends, because then you'd be able to play these shows, and half your friends were in bands too. So it was you'd be playing with your friends and the bands that you loved, and it was pretty much the perfect storm.
Talk about those early days of Nodes and the formation of the band.
The first practice was John, myself, and Thomas, and we had to use the band room at USF. Wasn't there something funny happened with that? I know something funny.
It was actually the first time I ever met you in person. So it was you might have had your drums already set up, because weren't you in the jazz band or something there? Was that you knew the band director or something?
I'm pretty sure I used the drums at USF. So okay. I used the band. Yeah. When we finally when I finally brought my kit from home down to college, it was this old Slingerland kit, and it had this white plastic wrap on it. And I wanted it to be like a stained wood. So in that dorm room at the college, I was sitting there with a heat gun and all these chemicals stripping these drum shells. And, anytime you do something like that, you don't really realize how bad the smell is, because you're in there while it's building up. I cleared the whole dorm out. So yeah, kind of a lot of early Node stuff is based around that college.
Very much so. Yes, Ryan was always into doing a lot of work on his own drum sets, even to the point where he built his own drum set from the ground up. So
that's awesome. What made you want to build your own drum set? Just control, or?
Well, again, college. I'm not. It's like at the end of every year, you would get a check back. It's like your student loan would borrow. They'd try to guesstimate how much you had to borrow, and then it would always be too much, so you get like a check back. And I got a check for like $1,600, and I decided I can't get like a really nice drum kit for that much, so I'm gonna buy a bunch of components and build the kit that I want. So that's the whole reason for doing that.
Salvation!
How'd you get hooked up with Facedown Records?
That was Press Pack. I think they were a lot more valuable back in.
Yeah.
What year was that? Not 2001 or 2002 when we actually, because I graduated high school in 2002, and we got signed while I was still like at the end of my senior high school, my senior year in high school. So it must have been 2002. Thomas had put together some press packs. I think it contained a VHS tape, honestly, because that was the other thing, like the local scene, everybody would record shows. You'd have footage, and you just have to ask a friend about the guy who had the camera at the show, and then you'd have access to it. It was crazy. So we sent off a press pack. I'm sure we sent to a couple of labels, and we didn't know if we really fit in. Like I mentioned before, we weren't really the standard East Coast, West Coast hardcore vibe. So we didn't know where we'd fall into the sound or if the label would be interested in us because we didn't sound enough like the other bands or whatever. But they were the most responsive. I mean, Jason, you can't say enough good things about him and Virginia and the family there to this day, how they run their label, the integrity. I mean, it's amazing, like what they've done and what they're still doing, and how they haven't had to make concessions for the way they want to run things, which is absolutely. We saw some examples through some other labels out there, and if we hadn't signed with Facedown, we would have been lucky to get through 2 albums at the most, probably, with some of the problems we ran into down the road. But yeah, we sent this off to Jason. He got back to us, and it was awesome. He was super supportive. Told us, we had released, I think, some of the songs on an EP with another band from Iowa at the time, and we re-released. He was okay with that because it obviously wasn't as wide a release as he was going to provide. So he had, I think the guy's name was Caleb, Caleb, if I remember correctly. This guy worked for Boot to Head Records, and he would do artwork for Jason, just somebody that he networked with. And so the artwork, I don't know, Thomas might have talked to him, and that's where the artwork for the first album came from, was this guy named Caleb. And it seemed to fit well with the lyrical content and the vision that Thomas had, and the rest of us, nobody hated it. So we went with it. Plus, we felt like, oh my gosh, someone just did artwork for us. I mean, it was, this is going to be released. It was beyond kind of any of our dreams at the time. So it was absolutely awesome. It just seemed like, yeah, we heard back from Jason, and it was just it spun from there, and then a wonderful relationship with that label just took off.
It's awesome. Yeah, you guys were on early to Facedown. What led you to want to be part of that scene?
I don't know that we knew that we didn't want to be a part of it. What was do you remember much, Ryan?
Just like anyone, you create something and you want as many people to hear it. So yeah, just having anyone be interested in us, and we just thought that was cool. And I mean, I think with any band, it just like, you don't really know what the next step is going to be. You just kind of take it one step at a time. And, like I honestly, I don't think at that point we were even thinking like, hey, let's do like a tour. Like, I don't think we ever thought we'd really be playing much beyond our state. And then, you sign a record, and Next thing you know, you're buying a van, buying boxes to strap on top of the van because you don't have a trailer and there's not enough room in the van, and you're going across the country. So yeah.
That's
we
cool.
cobbled it together. It together.
Yeah. What was the connection to getting Derek Hess to do the artwork for the self-titled record?
That's even more of a question. I think it's still a question that we're asking. We somehow he noticed us. We captured his attention with the first album. Somebody gave him the first album. This is a pretty cool story too. So he had emailed us. We had dial-up internet. We were all living in the same house. Our practice space was in a basement. We have basements in South Dakota. They're below grade. So you have the main floor and then a floor below. You can make all kinds of noise and think you can't be heard by the neighborhood, but you probably can. But anyway, so we all lived together. We all had our practice space in the basement. It worked pretty good. And we had dial-up internet at the time. And every night, we'd check out, what emails we got. And that's how we were booking shows at the time. And we got this email. I remember Thomas getting this email from Derek Hess, and he thought somebody was pranking us. Like, that was the initial reaction. Like, there's no way this is somebody that made up a email address. It sounds like it could be from Derek Hess. Anyways, it was something to the effect of, somebody exposed me to your first album. Here, you got a second one on the way. I was wondering if you guys needed artwork for it. So we were like, yes. So somehow we coordinated that we got on a show. It was the venue like the Cleveland Agora or something like that. We got on this show with
Every Time I Die.
Yeah, Me Without You, Every Time I Die, and Norma Jean headlined. And there were some other local bands that played. It was fantastic. So we drove out. We played like 2 garage shows or something on the way out just to get to Cleveland. That was the primary reason we were leaving for this weekend trip. And we meet Derek Hess. This show was also Derek Hess had released a DVD of all the videos. Did he work on DVD? There's a Derek Hess DVD of like video collection. He did MXPX and Sick of It All. And I can't remember all the other bands that were on this, but it was a release. That show was a release for this. So there was it was a nice venue. It was probably one of the nicest venues we'd ever played, like sound system wise and just everything put together. And it was packed. I mean, God, the lineup. And then, we played in there, and they took the photos from the self-titled album are all from the stage at that show. They were all taken that night. So Nick Thomas is in that layout from the Spill Canvas, who did really well, and they're still active. Yeah. They were actually just on tour with 2 of the guys from Juliana Theory. My sister went and saw them in Denver. It was awesome. Anyways, the layout, the pictures in the layout were taken that night, and we got to meet, Norma Jean, Every Time I Die, Me Without You. Those guys were on tour or something together, but there's a video that Every Time I Die put out where there's a kid that jumps off the stage in a robot costume, and it disintegrates as soon as he gets into the crowd. And then Norma Jean didn't have a vocalist at this point in their tour, and so they just stuck a microphone on a straight stand in the center front of the stage and started playing, and it was pandemonium. Like, it was absolutely amazing to watch. It was so fun. But that was a heck of a show, and all the things that happened that night too. And then it was over. I remember driving back because we just drove straight home after this. I don't remember if it was a Saturday or a Sunday. And I remember seeing Me Without You. We passed Me Without You, and it was just like so much fun. Everything you want to do every night when you're in a band, and then calm, quiet drive home. the highs and the lows there. So yeah, it was that was definitely a precursor to the next however many years that we were in existence.
Yeah. Ryan, what led you to leave the band?
It was just finances partially. I was married. I think I got married even during the self-titled album. Might have been when I got married. Yeah. And so we got a house, and I don't know, I just felt like we were doing a lot of tours over and over again. If we would have gotten felt like we were accumulating more and more success and kind of going up the ladder, I would have stayed on. But it was just, I don't know, I just felt like it was time. So.
Yeah, you're starting a business. And
I'm starting a business, yeah. Yep.
And Ryan and his wife actually drove in a Saab in their own car behind us on one of our tours as their honeymoon. So
our honeymoon was tour. So
oh man.
We did get to go there. She got to get to the ocean, so it was, She
also got to see our roadie take a dump off a second-story balcony at a hotel room. Which was
That's also true. That's also true. We were a very green band on the road. We would share, just pack as many people as we could to a single hotel room. So, sometimes it wasn't the most family friendly or lady friendly, say. That was the tour of every, we'd usually ask for a place to stay, and on stage, hey, hit us up at the merch at the merch booth if we can stay with you tonight. And then so we'd meet the people in the parking lot before we're going to drive to their house. And when Jen was with, we'd always be like, so there's no cockroaches, right? Every time we would ask,
you don't have cockroaches, right? Dude, I mean, we'd walk into a house and the lights would turn on and you knew something was scurrying away. You couldn't see what it was. One time we walked into one, and the cockroach was so big, I think you named it Norman, John. And it's on its back.
They had already named it. They had already named it, and they told us they didn't have cockroaches, but they had one with a name.
Yeah. We walk in, and there's this 3-inch long cockroach on its back.
Oh my God.
Screaming, and Jen walks in, and the kid slowly sweeps it under the dishwasher.
That's true. That's true.
We slept a lot of places. We slept on that tour. We slept with the lights on all night. Good time.
Oh man, very true. I got up and got into the van a couple of times. That was, Yep.
That's crazy. That's funny. A Love for Enemies. I remember seeing A Love for Enemies, and they asked at the show. They're like, "Does anybody have a place for us to sleep tonight?" Me and my roommate were like, "You can come to our house." So,
there you go. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Seriously, I think in all the years of touring, we probably stayed in less than 10 hotels. Wouldn't you say? I mean, it was almost always staying with people.
Yeah. The first tour, we got spoiled. Somehow, every house we stayed in on that first tour, we were out with Falling Cycle. We went East Coast, Southern East Coast, wasn't it mostly? Yeah. And every house was a freaking mansion. The problem was there were more people living in these homes than there were attending the shows that we were playing at the time. But we got spoiled. I mean, every night, and then it would be a smorgasbord every morning. Amazing food. So you'd, distended bellies back into the van, go to the next show, but at least you were full. We got spoiled. So every tour after that, it was much more of a struggle because we were playing these shows that were much more DIY. The promoter would always have somebody there that would, they'd almost expect that the bands would be staying with somebody that the promoter knew, and they'd already kind of have it set up. It was like they divvied it up before we even got to the venue, who's staying with who. But when you get to the point where you're playing more, venues that that's all they do for shows every night or whatever it is, it was a totally different ball game. But we had remember that night in Flagstaff where every hotel we stopped at said vacancy, and we'd get up to the front window and there was no vacancy, and we're like, what do you got to do to get? I mean, there were nights like that too, and sometimes you just stay and keep driving. You just keep driving, and there was no place to stay. But yeah, we preferred to stay with people. I don't think we ever turned it down. I mean, maybe once or twice, but we stayed. I mean, some of the best tour stories were because we agreed to stay with people whenever we could. So, remember
the house with the well? There was a house is it Phoenix? It's in Arizona.
Yes. Yep. It was. Yep.
We came through and this is probably 6 months after that. Remember that movie, The Ring?
Yeah.
Yep.
We were crawling out of the well. So we go to this house and we like pull around back behind this house, and there's this creepy freaking well, just like in the ring behind the house. The house was really weird. Like you get there, you don't even feel like the people who are living there are supposed to be living there. It's almost like they were squatters, and half the electricity didn't work in the house. And then 6 months later, we came to Phoenix again, asked for a place to stay again. Totally different group of people. And like about 2 blocks down the street, we're like, oh my God. It's the freaking house. Like all totally different people.
Oh my God.
The only thing that makes sense is that something came out of that well and killed the people that were there before.
Exactly.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
It's the only thing.
Arizona was famous for that because there was another. I can't remember what city it was, if it was still Phoenix. But remember, we stayed across from that abandoned like preschool, and the kids had all these pictures. Like whenever you took pictures with old school digital cameras, any dust in the air would show up as an orb. And these kids were convinced that these orbs, they had all these pictures of orbs. There was spirits and ghosts and everything. But the grounds of this abandoned school was legit creepy. I mean, you go in there and people had planted dolls in cabinetry, but it was just there and anyone could walk through it. It was, it wasn't volatile in any way. But yeah, you go after dark and you had all these kids, ramping it up in your mind as how scary it would be to go there. And yeah, something about staying places in Arizona. There was always an adventure to be had.
Oh, man. That's so funny. Job, what was it like for you keeping the band going with all the member changes and having to deal with constantly replacing people?
What did we figure? There was 18 people in the band. We had 3 bass players. Yeah, we had 3 bass players before we played a show. Way back early on. It was in our 3rd bass player, and we finally played a show. So, it was exactly that. So, we had member and lineup changes. Ryan and I were musically, we had the most connection. We had written together the longest of anyone in the band. Having started it and then gotten through 3 records, and we started to write the 4th album together. We had some material laid out, and there were some ideas there. We hadn't really dove into it yet, but it was. I mean, it was tough to work without Ryan. It definitely was, and not only because logistically there were people in and out of the band, but 18 members. I think by the time it was all said and done, there were 18 different members. So that last album, we had we made the label change move, and we were able to do some pre-production to an extent that we weren't ever able to do before. Some video work where we got to work with I wanted to work with a guy who had made a Mastodon video out in Atlanta, Georgia. So we got to get that all set up. So that was really cool. We had a manager of sorts at the time, a really nice guy down actually in Atlanta. So he took us from the airport to where we needed to go. It just kind of worked out that way, serendipity. And It was a struggle. That last album, it wasn't so much the writing; it was a struggle. But getting people lined up to play the old material while we're writing new material, and it was arduous, and it was there was definitely times after the first record, and I think every band goes through that, where it's like you did the first record, it was totally fun. You didn't have any deadlines. You didn't know it was going to get released even. And then you start to get to that point where it's more like a job, and you hope that your creativity isn't suffering. And, you hope that there is still an element of heart to what you're putting out there, and not just trying to get something out there so that you can get something out there because it's expected. So I think we did a pretty good job of that. It was fun. There was a lot of fun still left in writing that last album, but the personnel stuff started to creep in, and it got really chunky. And I remember we were trying to find a bass player there at the end, and I think once we kind of located, he only ended up playing our final show. We didn't even get to go on the tour that we were trying to prepare for. Because there was some really tough family stuff that was going on with our drummer at the time, and it kind of the decision. So Jake Stefik and myself were the 2 members from the previous record. that decided that it wasn't worth trying to find yet another drummer and continue this thing going forward. It was just too arduous at the time, and we ended up calling it quits not too long after the last record came out. I don't think we actually got to tour. No, we got to do one tour with the pressing in hand and like new T-shirts and the merch and for that album, for Defined by Struggle, and that's a bummer. It felt like a lot of wasted effort, but it was also a record that we were proud of. And to consider, it was a third vocalist, a new drummer. What we were able to produce sonically was a lot of fun, and it felt kind of fresh, felt kind of thrashy, and it still felt like Nodes. So it was a very challenging time. I'm glad I did it before I was married or had kids, and it was the end result. I'm still happy with. When we did our reunion show in 2017, we went and played Facedown Fest and a couple shows in the Midwest local to us. The singer from Defined by Struggle, who's a very good friend of ours, Kyle Beneke, who did a documentary recently on a venue in Omaha, long since passed, called the Cog Factory. Go on YouTube, look up this documentary, donate to him. He did a fantastic job. It's like more information about punk rock and hardcore from this venue than you can shake a stick at in 50 minutes. So it's amazing. But anyways, Kyle did our reunion show as a vocalist, and we didn't play any of the material that we wrote with him. We played everything but the Defined by Struggle material. He was totally with it. It was for Facedown, so we played the Facedown material, and he was totally awesome about it, and it worked out really, really, really well. It was a blast. It was an absolute blast. There's some good YouTube videos. Actually, he does video editing work, and so after the show, he had some stuff set up on stage, but he also called out and got video from the crowd, so we collaborated. Like, we had some videos with like 6 angles. It was great. It was fantastic. So 2017 Facedown Fest, there's some good footage if you haven't had a Nodes fix for a while.
Yeah. What led to that reunion show?
Jason Dunn.
Jason Dunn.
Yeah, he reached out to us and said
he reached out and had some interview questions about the album first, about years to come. Was like that was kind of the first connection we made. He wanted us to reflect on the album.
It was an anniversary, like a 10-year anniversary or something. And then he also said, hey, we're thinking about, for our 20-year Facedown anniversary, getting a bunch of the old bands back together and having them out here at the festival. And then it was like, geez, you get an offer like that, especially from Jason. I mean, those were some of the best times of our lives, Ryan and I, musically. So, we were going to do everything we can to make it happen. And we did. We had some. It was kind of hard figuring out who was going to do it from the old lineup and who was able to. Our good buddy Terry Taylor from Lawrence, Kansas. He was going to do it, but he had some complications coming up with some of his. He was in like med school or something. There was just a lot of stuff going on. So we kind of it was basically going right back into it with the lineup, trying to figure out and not step on toes. But we got to where we had a lineup, and it wasn't like it was only one member from the band. So we had a great we successfully made ourselves sound like we did back in the day, and not like the old man that we had since become. My God, Heavenly Father, I feel forsaken. Disgrace and shame consume me. Eternal night now reigns. Daylight engulf my shadows. I pray to end this agony. What led to that transition from Facedown Records to Victory? We were done with the albums that we had signed up for with Facedown, and nothing against Facedown. We didn't re-sign. I don't even think. I'm sure Jason he probably talked to us about it, and we just had an offer. We had a lawyer that was helping us out quite a bit. And there were some talks between. We'd actually talked with gosh, who was the label that the first Lamb of God record came out on? Anyways, we'd been in talks with some other labels, and the guy who owned the label had sent us a contract while he was in Japan, and it was like a contract with a different band name on it. It wasn't right at all, and then he wasn't going to be back in the States till a month later to get it corrected. And so in that time, Victory sent us an offer, and our lawyer Chip, he's worked with a number of bands at the time that had been on Victory, and he said, when I read this contract, I fell off my chair. That was what he told me. And he's like, I think it would be the best move for you. And so with his counsel, and Chip is still to this day, we have scant contact with him, but he's an awesome dude. We can trust him. I know he worked with Ford Today and stuff like that down the road too. So he's done a lot of good for a lot of bands, protecting their interests. But we got it was a very non-committal for the band. It wasn't there wasn't a lot of precedent in it. There wasn't a lot of risk in it, and so it just made sense. And at the time, I remember our first promo picture was just 4 of us without the vocalist. So when we signed to the label, they wanted to have promo pics to announce the signing, and we're like, gosh, are they going to, like, we hadn't told them yet that we didn't have a vocalist. So it was early promo pics for Defined by Struggle, and that was way before the album was named or anything like that. It was just 4 guys. We had a brand new drummer at the time, and so yeah, it was interesting, but it worked out. It was somewhat smooth. We did learn that the reputation of some people at the label did precede them, and they weren't as constructive. There was there was at least one drunk dial situation, and I answered the phone, and I didn't know what in the world the point of this call was. And the next day, I talked to the assistant, and he was just like, "Just forget about that. That happens from time to time."
Oh man!
Oh my goodness! Then we came up to a point where we were going to go on a tour. The label that you had previously mentioned had taken on. So they were famous for taking on their own merch output for their bands and then taking a cut from all that. So they were busy trying to take on as many things in-house as they possibly could, and that included booking booking agents for tours. And so we were on this tour, and I remember looking at it every day, and dates were getting filled in. And like the weekend before we were supposed to go on this tour, there were still a couple of holes. And so I was trying to reach out to this person because I knew some promoters, because we had booked all of our own tours for many years. And I remember trying to reach out to this guy we'd been in contact with before, and give him some leads on some places where people would be interested to get us into these fill-in shows here and there. And I couldn't reach him all of a sudden. So turns out he had been just let go summarily. Nobody told anybody. The person that told me got in trouble because they weren't supposed to tell me at the label. And then the head honcho over at Victory ended up calling me and yelling at me because I was asking him what the plan was for the tour. Like, had the tour been dissolved? Was there someone that was going to pick up the booking? Like, are we still copacetic to go on this thing? Like, what's up? I was just asking the questions that anyone would ask, and I basically got shouted down. So it was a contentious relationship kind of from the get-go, which is why I said what I said earlier about being on Facedown and really having a good run with Jason and the Facedown team.
Yeah. Well, you both are in a brand new band called March in Arms. How'd that project get started? Ryan, you've moved from the drums to playing guitar and the frontman role.
Yep. March in Arms, I get the name wasn't decided on until much later, but some of the music for March in Arms, actually, I was writing that as far back as 2003 and 2004 on tour in Nodes. And it was about the time that the band Iced Earth put out an album called The Glorious Burden. And each song on that album is kind of about like a historical war moment. And the B-side to the album is this big epic 3-part series about Gettysburg. And I've always really been into war history, World War II, World War I history. And so I just kind of thought, well, that's pretty cool. It'd be cool to do a whole band that just does nothing but that. So then I started, just kind of kept chiseling away at that. And after Nodes broke up a couple of years later, Jon and I, we started another band with some other friends called Old Ironside. And what was that, Jon? Probably 2 years ran with that.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
And I was drumming in that. And then the vocalist of that band quit. And then we kept trying to have practices, and I was like still behind the drum set, and Jon was just like, what about all that stuff you've been working on? And I'm like, well, we're going to have to get a drummer if we're going to do that. So that's kind of how that started. So 2012, probably when that started.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have some demos from 2012 up on Bandcamp.
Yep.
People can check out, along with your album. Jon, you said you guys have a second album that's being released soon or in the works.
Yeah, it's been recorded. The COVID thing kind of threw us off a little bit. It probably would have been released in the spring was kind of the plan. Here in the Midwest, if you're not used to having snow, it's a great time to make a record when there is snow. Because it's just life slows down a little bit. So we recorded. God, what winter? How long has it been now since we actually got the record?
We recorded it in November 2018. That's when we recorded this album. And so we just had the whole process of going back and forth and getting the mixes where you want, and getting like the artwork and trying to like get this snowball rolling so you have this big release. And then we had 2 members quit the end of last year, and then COVID hit. And so now we're just kind of like, how do we time this to release this so it just doesn't like forgotten about when we want to start playing shows again? So hopefully soon, probably the next couple months. So
we've recorded the first album, the one that's on Bandcamp right now. That was all recorded with Jeremy Schaefer from Earth Groans, who's on Solid State. He actually has a studio in his home. It's about an hour drive from here in a town called Scotland, South Dakota. And we worked with him on this album too. It was just the next progression in the discography here. So we're really excited about it. Worked really hard on it. We were actually in Las Vegas trying to get a spot on Wacken Festival, which now isn't happening either. We were playing this Battle of the Bands down in Vegas, so we were flying around right before COVID hit the fan. So even the winner, we didn't win, but even if we had, we would have been very disappointed because we wouldn't have been able to go to this.
Yeah.
But it was a great time. It was fun to go down there and play on a we're used to playing locally. We're not touring anymore. We try to stay as active as we possibly can, and it's a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to getting this thing out there, and it's definitely not a project that's riding the coattails of Nodes anymore or at all. People who like power metal will like it. Maybe people who like Nodes will like it. But check out there's a video people seem to enjoy quite a bit called Ashes on YouTube. It's something we put a lot of heart into. Ryan, especially. We actually built. Well, Ryan, you tell the story about the C-130 that we had to build.
Yeah. So we wanted to have. It's about soldiers coming home, and so we wanted to have a C-130 in the video. And Sioux Falls actually has an Air Force base with C-130s, and I'm actually classmates with some of the people that are kind of higher up over there, and I tried. I mean, I knew that would be kind of a high bar to actually use a multi-million-dollar aircraft for our no-name band video. So the next best thing was our drummer at the time. His family has a pallet shop, so they have lots of semis and semi-trailers. And so we went out for 2-3 days and converted the inside of a semi-trailer with a fully functioning C-130 ramp door. Like, I analyzed the hell out of the inside of that aircraft. I bought cargo netting that would match the inside of the aircraft. We put up like insulation that would look like it. There's not hydraulics on it, so like in the video, there's actually like 4 people with sticks operating this door on the other side. You can't see it, but we spent so much time building that, and by the time the final cut of the video comes out, because that door, you see that door opening shot is 3 seconds long, and our bass player was just so pissed because he's like, I spent a whole weekend helping building that, and that's all we got to do that thing.
But it's an epic shot. It is an epic shot.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an epic shot. So yeah. If you like military history and you like epic, really catchy power metal, check out Marching Arms.
I'll try and kill my way to you. I haven't seen her for so long, but there may come a time to leave my life down. And she'll still love me when I'm gone. I had to kill my way to you. I haven't seen her for so long, but there may come a time to leave my life down, and she'll still love me when I'm gone, and she'll still love me when I'm gone.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our theme song was written and composed by the legendary Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe on iTunes and give the show a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, click on the Patreon link at asthestorygrows.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young